Hello viewers, welcome back to our series of lectures on NMR spectroscopy. Today we will continue our discussion on the factors affecting chemical shift. The session is planned as follows, that is, to begin with we will briefly review what we did in the previous session, and then thereafter we will continue with our earlier session, that is the effect of electronegativity on the chemical shifts of protons in the molecules. And in this context, we will talk about Schollre's additive rules. We will try to see that how do we use these rules to predict the chemical shift of given proton. Thereafter, we will take up few more factors which affect chemical shift, and these happen to be the hybridization of adjacent atoms. That means, if you talk about a proton, so what is hybridization of the carbon atom next to that proton? Then thereafter, we will take up in detail diamagnetic anisotropy. It is a very important factor that affects the chemical shift of protons, and then lastly we will take up hydrogen bonding. So, there are three main factors we will be considering today in the context of the chemical shifts. Then towards the end we will try to sum up what we do in today's session. Okay. Just for a brief review, what we did in the previous session, we basically kind of established the need for a reference compound to measure chemical shift, because that was our premise that we want to measure chemical shift. How do we do that? So, in that context we argued and tried to establish that means we need some kind of a compound with respect to which we can make measurement of chemical shift. And then thereafter we listed different compounds which are used for the purpose, and we justified TMS, that is tetramethylsilane, to be a suitable choice. And thereafter we explained two scales, that is delta and tau scales, which are used for representing chemical shifts. Having done that, we took up a very important factor, that is electronegativity. How does that affect the proton chemical shifts? That we discussed in detail in the previous session. Now we will continue from there, and to continue we will just recall what exactly we did in the previous session in the context of effect of electronegativity. You will recall that we argued and we showed the data for that, and stated that electronegative substituents attached to a given proton or in the neighborhood of a proton, they deshield the proton. They deshield the proton by decreasing the electron density around them. And we showed some kind of electrostatic potential maps, wherein we show that an electronegative atom like this, a chlorine here, pulls up electron toward itself and then deshields these protons here, whereby they come to resonance at low fields or high delta values there. And we established that larger the electronegativity, larger is the effect. That means, if I have got a substituent of higher electronegativity, that will affect the field more and the shift will be larger there. And second thing we established there was that if there are more substituents there, then the effect is more, and this effect happens to be cumulative. That is where we finished in the previous session. Okay. Now, let us build up from here. Let us build up from here and see that from these two things which we recalled, we know that the proton chemical shifts of compounds and the electronegativity of substituents are correlated. So, that correlation we established in the previous session. And since large number of molecules or compounds have been studied for NMR and enormous amount of data is available, and people have sat down and tried to analyze this data and have come out with some kind of empirical rules which can be used to predict the chemical shift of protons in different molecules there. We will take up one such empirical correlation. They are called as Schollre's rules. So, they basically are the rules for species kind of moieties of the kind CH2XY. Basically, they are methane derivatives. That is the way we can visualize it. That means, CH2XY, where X and Y are two substituents there, or we can think of species like CHXYZ, where X, Y, Z are the three substituents there. So, for these, what Schollre has predicted is that he has given contributions of different groups. That means, if I have a species like CH2 and there are different groups are there. So, what is the contribution of each group to the chemical shift of these protons? So, that has kind of listing is there, we will share that with you, and from those listings the kind of chemical shift for a given proton can be worked out by the following formula, wherein delta H happens to be 0.233. This basically is the chemical shift for methane, and plus sigma sigma I. The sigma i's are the contributions of each of the substituents we are going to talk about. We will do some examples on this. This is a kind of a table. Such kind of tables are available extensively in literature, which try to give you different kind of substituents and their contributions to the chemical shift of the given types of protons there. So, we are talking about the protons which basically are about the methylene and methine protons there. Let us take examples here. Let us take the example of, say, ethyl acetate. For ethyl acetate, if I want to look at, this is my formula for ethyl acetate, I want to work out, theoretically calculate on the basis of these empirical rules what is the chemical shift position for methylene protons. That means, these are the two protons I am looking forward to. When I do that, what do I do? These are my starting point here. So, delta H as per the formula is 0.233. So, that is the base value I have. Then I can see that there are two substituents here. One is this methyl group here and one is this ester part of it here, acetate part here. Now, from the tables we can see that this particular methyl group here as a substituent here contributes 0.47 to the chemical shift there, and for this group the contribution happens to be much larger, that is 3.13. That is what obvious because it is attached through a oxygen atom which is highly electronegative. Now, if you put the two together, so it is 0.233, 0.47 plus 3.13, it adds to about 3.833, and the observed chemical shift happens to be 4.1, which is not very different here. So, we see that these rules are reasonably okay. Let us take the same molecule and talk about, say, methyl protons. So, if I want to work out predict the chemical shift position for these methyl protons, what do? I use the same formula here, delta H will be equal to 0.233, that is the base value here, and then for this substituent here, that is COOR, this substituent we have value of 1.55, add the two together, it gives me 1.883, and the observed value is 2, which is not again very far. So, we find that these rules are reasonably okay. Let us take some more examples here. Say methyl propionate. In case of methyl propionate, we do the same exercise all over again. Say for methylene protons, we find that the value will come out, same process will follow here. So, 0.233, 0.47 and 1.55, it adds to 2.25, observed is 2.4. Similarly, we can take up the same molecule and try to work out the chemical shift position for the methyl protons. Same methyl protons, we start with the base value of 0.233, and to this we add 3.13 for this particular group here, that is RCOO. That means a linkage through oxygen atom here. So, this gives a contribution of 3.13. It adds to give me 3.363, which is again a reasonable agreement with the observed value of 3.6. So, what you find here is that these rules are reasonably okay in predicting the chemical shift positions of protons in the kind of moieties we talked about. Similar kind of rules are available for other class of molecules like molecules with unsaturation or aromatic molecules and wide variety of them. And we find that the literature is full of all such kind of rules there, and these can be used to predict the chemical shift positions in the respective class of molecules over there. Okay. Now, having talked about the effect of electronegativity in reasonable details, let us move further and take up another factor which affects the chemical shift positions of protons, and that happens to be the hybridization of adjacent atom or carbon atom, to be more specific. What basically happens is the chemical shift of a proton which is bonded to a carbon atom depends on the hybridization of the carbon atom. That is very interesting. So, what we know is that the electronegativity of different hybridized carbon atoms is different, and we know that the following trend holds there, that is sp hybrid orbitals are more electronegative than sp2, which in turn are having more electronegativity as compared to sp3, and this basically is on the basis of the contribution of s orbitals in the hybrid orbital. This is 50% s, this is about 33% or 25% s there. So, because of this difference in that, the electronegativity is different there. Same thing gets reflected in the chemical shift positions of the protons which are attached to these carbon atoms there. Let us see there. So, what you find is that any proton which is attached to a carbon atom having sp3 hybridization, that typically has the delta values of about 0.8 to 1.7 ppm. That is a kind of range we expect it to be observed there. For sp2, the range is found to be 4.6 to 5.7. For SP, it happens to be 2 to 3 ppm, which is not following this trend here, it is off, because if you go with this trend, this value has to be more than 5.7 ppm. Why of this we will take up in a different context little later. But this is important that these kind of correlations do matter, but they are not the only contributions to the chemical shift positions of the protons there. Thus, we can conclude that the electronegativity of substituents near the proton being monitored can help to predict the chemical shift positions to a very good extent. That means, electronegativity is a reasonably good and important factor there, but there are number of exceptions which cannot be explained on the basis of just electronegativity as a criteria. Some of them happen to be, say, acetylene, the value happens to be 1.8. We just showed that if I just go by electronegativity considerations, it must be more than 5.7. It happens to be just 1.8. Similarly, ethylene is 5.25, it's again fairly downfield. Benzene is 7.27, extremely low value in terms of the field, very high delta value. Aldehydes are exceptionally high, as close to about 10 ppm. And there are many more which cannot be explained on the basis of electronegativity. And the reason for that is a new factor, a very important consideration, that is called as diamagnetic anisotropy. Let us understand what is diamagnetic anisotropy. Diamagnetic anisotropy basically refers to the dependence of shielding and de-shielding of the protons on the orientation of molecule with respect to the applied magnetic field. This is very different from what we have done so far. Electronegativity was just an inductive effect. Now, what basically we are getting into is the effect of the orientation of molecule with respect to the applied field. Applied field is in the upward z direction. Where is the molecule? It's like this or this. So, all this orientation part of it comes into play, and that is what is called as a diamagnetic anisotropy. We will see that anisotropy basically refers to some effect being different in different directions. We will see that. So, let us take up the diamagnetic anisotropy in acetylene. Acetylene we know is a linear molecule, we all know that fairly well. That is, we have got this is carbon, another carbon, one hydrogen here, another hydrogen here. It has been shown vertically for a reason here. Now, this molecule of acetylene actually has a kind of a cylinder of pi cloud around this, because we know that there are two double bonds. That means, this is sigma bond here, carbon carbon sigma bond. There is one carbon carbon pi bond here, another pi bond on this direction. So, all put together that basically creates some kind of a cylindrical environment of electron cloud around the molecule there. Now, when I take a molecule of acetylene put into a magnetic field, what happens is that this molecule, when aligns with the field as shown over here, vertical like this, that this is the field direction and this is the molecular axis as well. That means, the molecular axis and the applied field are in the same direction. When that so happens, then this electron cloud, that means the electron cloud starts circulating at right angles. This is the influence of the magnetic field, because the magnetic field is there, electron cloud starts circulating. This circulating electron cloud actually generates some kind of a induced magnetic field, which is shown by this kind of lines of force over there. And what you find is that this induced magnetic field that opposes the applied field here. So, we find here this is my proton here, applied field direction is this, and the magnetic field which is induced is coming in direction opposite to this one. So, we find that this induced field is opposing our applied field. As a consequence, the protons get shielded, they come at low delta value. That is how we can explain the observance of acetylene at around say 1.8 or 2 ppm or so. Now, but one can always argue that the molecule is not just aligned with the field only, and that is true, because the molecule can take up, because if I take say a sample tube is there, my acetylene is there in that. Now, the acetylene molecules which are in the magnetic field, they are tumbling around, they are not stationary. So, when they are moving around, so they will be in all possible orientations with respect to the applied field. What we have done is, we have just taken one of such orientation, that is when the molecule is aligned with the applied field. Let us look at the possibility when the molecule is perpendicular to the applied field. What happens in this case? This is the same as we just discussed before. That means the molecule is in a direction aligned with the field here. If it is perpendicular here, we find that in this orientation these pi electrons, which are like a cylinder, they do not have that kind of freedom to get into circulation, and the effect is there, but very weak. And here one more thing happens is that induced field which comes up here, which is generated here, we find that at a proton here, because these are my carbon atoms, this is a proton here. So, here actually it is augmenting the applied field, it is in the same direction. In this case it was opposing the field, here it is augmenting it, but this effect is much weaker. And in principle, as I mentioned earlier, all orientations are possible. So, why do we observe the effect as we observe? The reason for that is that this effect is much weaker, and the effect at different orientations other than these two, they get cancelled to a large extent, and effectively what we observe is the average of all possible orientations. And out of all orientations, since this particular orientation happens to have a very significant contribution, so this kind of determines the effective or the observed chemical shift position of acetylene protons over there. Okay. So, that is how do we account for what we observe in case of acetylene. Now, let us take up the diamagnetic anisotropy in case of ethylene. In case of ethylene, it is a simple molecule having carbon-carbon double bond, wherein we have got a pi electron cloud above and below the planar molecule here, and when such a molecule is put into magnetic field, then we are taking one orientation where it is perpendicular, that means the molecule is aligned perpendicular to the field. These pi electrons get into circulation, as we discussed in previous case as well, and herein what happens is that there is an induced magnetic field which comes as a consequence of circulatory electrons, and then this magnetic field actually augments. We can see it here, that is, we have the proton here, and the field which has come up here, the induced magnetic field, it is in the same direction as the applied field here. That means, it is augmenting or adding to the applied field there. As a consequence, the protons are de-shielded, that means, they will be observed at low field. Okay. So, that is which corresponds to the chemical shift positions observed for ethylene molecule. And here again the same argument holds, that the molecule can take up all orientations, but this orientation has a significant effect which actually determines the overall consequence of the putting the molecule into the magnetic field there, or the consequence of the diamagnetic anisotropy. That means, in this direction the effect is much larger than in other directions. So, that is the meaning of anisotropy, that means the effect is different in different directions there. Okay. Let us move further and take up a very important molecule, that is of benzene. In case of benzene, we know that it is a flat molecule and the alternating pi bonds are conjugated. As a consequence, what we have is, we have got a cloud on the above the plane of the molecule and below that, and when such a molecule is aligned perpendicular to the applied field, these pi electrons generate a ring current. That means, they get into circulation, and as a consequence they create a magnetic field here, and this magnetic field is very strong, and this actually augments, like in case of ethylene, they augment the applied field at the protons here. As a consequence, the protons along the magnetic axis are de-shielded, that means, they are observed at low field, and since this effect happens to be very strong, we find the shift is much larger. Benzene comes to resonance at a chemical shift of about 7.27 ppm, which is exceedingly low field, and which is a characteristic value for aromatic, that is a range for aromatic molecules there. Okay. Let us talk a little more about molecule of benzene. What you find is, because this effect is very pronounced, because if we can compare the anisotropy in case of ethylene and benzene, both are unsaturated molecules. In case of ethylene, there is only one double bond, whereas in case of benzene, there are 3 double bonds there which are alternating, they are conjugated ones. So, because of that, they have a ring current, which because of the ring current, the effect is very pronounced, which is much larger than what happens in case of ethylene there. Okay. Now, another thing what we see is that like acetylene, even benzene can take up all possible orientations, and the pi electrons generate a ring current only when the molecule is aligned perpendicular to the field. This is very, very important, because that is why this effect is kind of specific to molecule of benzene or similar molecules which are aromatic in nature. And then the observed effect actually happens to be the average of all possible orientations, and the significant is the one when the molecule is aligned perpendicular to the applied field there. And what has been found is that this effect, which is when the molecule is perpendicular, is so strong that what we actually observe, the average of all possible orientations put together, is about 1/3 of that effect because of the perpendicular orientation. That means, the effect of perpendicular orientation is partly nullified by all other orientations put together there. Okay. Now, let us see that one point which we wish to make here is that ring current is a must for pronounced deshielding. Deshielding can be there because of unsaturation, but if we want to observe or a very strong kind of deshielding, we must have a ring current sustained over there. Let us take some examples here. Let us take the example of, say, cyclohexadiene. So, we find that there are two double bonds there which are alternating here, but the observed value for the chemical shift is 5.86 ppm, which is very close to the value of about 5.2 or 5.3 for our ethylene molecule there, not very different here. Let us take cyclooctatetraene. In this case, there are 4 such bonds there, and the value observed is about 5.8 only, not very different from that of ethylene, just one double bond. That means, on the other hand, if we go to benzene, when there are 3 such bonds there which are alternating, but they can undergo conjugation, and as a consequence what you have is we have a ring current sustaining here. Ring current is not there in this case. So, because of ring current, the effect is so very pronounced there. So, this ring current sustenance is very, very important consideration for aromatic molecules there. So, we find that the protons in cyclohexadiene and cyclooctatetraene are deshielded, but not to the extent what happens in case of benzene, and that is just because the ring current is not sustained in them. Okay. Let us move further and talk about another very important class of molecules called as annulenes. We will take an example of 18-annuline. In this case, what you find is the significant thing which I want to bring home is that this molecule is such that the observed chemical shift position happen to be for these protons which are kind of shaded in green here, they have a shaded position, they are extremely shaded protons and have a chemical shift of about -3 ppm. That means, they go even upfield of the TMS signal, much larger than that. That means, they are exceedingly shielded protons there. On the other hand, the protons on the periphery here, which are shaded in red color here, they are highly deshielded, they are observed at 9.3 ppm. Same molecule, 2 sets of protons observed at the 2 extremes of the spectrum over there. This is a kind of a manifestation of aromaticity here. Let us take up another class of molecules, that is aldehydes. In case of aldehydes, basically the pi electron cloud around the double bond here, that actually when aligned perpendicular to the field, what you find is that these pi electrons get into circulation at right angles and they generate 2 sets of regions there. The induced magnetic field is such that in the region which is marked as negative here, minus, there it is adding to the field there, whereas in this region it is kind of opposing the field here. So, what you find is this proton here, which is very characteristic of aldehydes, this is in the region which is being deshielded. As a consequence, this comes to resonance at a very high delta value of about 9 to 10 or 9.2 is a most typical value for aldehydes there. There is another class of molecules which shows anisotropy, that is alkanes, which is not expected, but they do show. This is not observed in all kind of molecules, but the ones where there is some kind of rigidity comes into picture. And what you observe is this anisotropy due to sigma bonds is a very, very small minor effect, not as significant as the other anisotropies we discussed. And also we find is this is observed only in the rigid systems, and in such cases what you find is in case of cyclohexane in the chair form as shown here, the equatorial protons, that is this kind of protons here, which are in the deshielding region, they come to resonance at about 0.5 ppm higher than the actual proton over there. So, that is again the diamagnetic anisotropic effect, and this effect is very minimal or the very small minor effect over there. Okay. Having talked about diamagnetic anisotropy in wide variety of class of molecules, let us move further and take up yet another factor which affects the chemical shift, and that happens to be hydrogen bonding. Hydrogen bond can be represented in terms of X, H, Y, where X and Y are electronegative atoms. It could be oxygen, nitrogen, or any halogen for that matter. And when this kind of situation comes, when the hydrogen bond is formed, there is some kind of a charge separation which comes into play, and that can be represented as follows, wherein we find that this hydrogen atom acquires some delta positive charge, whereas X and Y acquire the delta negative charges depending on their electronegativities and all. So, as a consequence, what happens is this proton, because of this positive charge on this gets de-shielded and it moves to a low field. That means the delta value increases there. That is a typical effect of hydrogen bonding. But if you get little more into this, we find that we know that there are two kinds of hydrogen bonding we have. One is intermolecular, one is intramolecular. Let us talk about intermolecular hydrogen bonding, which actually gets affected significantly in terms of the concentration and all. What basically happens is, that is, the chemical shift position for a molecule undergoing intermolecular hydrogen bonding actually depends on the concentration. Let us take some examples here. So, look at ethanol. Ethanol is observed that delta OH there, the OH proton is observed at about 5.28 ppm. But if I take ethanol and put CCl4 in that, if you put ethanol in CCl4, then this delta OH shifts to about 0.7 ppm. What basically happens is that in presence of CCl4, the hydrogen bonding breaks and ethanol molecules become independent, and then the delta value now comes out to be about 0.7, which is the value for OH group there. Then let us take another example, say in case of phenol, delta OH is observed at 7.45 ppm, whereas if I take the same phenol molecule in carbon tetrachloride, we find that delta OH shifts to about 4.37, again goes high field. These two examples show us that CCl4 molecule, which does not have any hydrogen bonding tendencies in this case, so that breaks the intermolecular hydrogen bonds and the chemical shift positions change. That is, a concentration dependence is very pronounced in case of intramolecular hydrogen bonding. On the other hand, if I talk about intramolecular hydrogen bonding, we find that it does not depend too much on the concentration. Let us take the same example again, that of phenol, 7.45 goes to 4.37 in presence of CCl4. But if I take a related molecule like orthohydroxyacetophenone, delta OH is at about 12 ppm, and if I add in CCl4, there is hardly any change in that, because in this case of intramolecular hydrogen bonding, that the hydrogen bond is within the molecule. So, these intermolecular interactions do not come into play, and what you observe is that there is no significant change in presence of a solvent like CCl4. Okay. Now, on the basis of all the factors we have discussed, we can briefly sum up. This kind of pictures you will come across practically in all textbooks here. We find is that this gives you the typical ranges for observing chemical shifts. These are on the basis of the factors we have discussed so far, the electronegativity, diamagnetic anisotropy, hydrogen bonding, and so on and so forth. So, they are the typical ranges. We will talk about it when we proceed further in the next few sessions over there. Let us sum up what we have done today. What we have done today is we briefly reviewed the contents of the previous session. Thereafter, we stated Schulre's additivity rules, which basically are empirical rules which can be used to predict the chemical shift positions of protons in two different class of molecules there. And then we discussed their application with the help of some examples. Having done that, we moved on to explaining the other factors which affect chemical shift, and in this process we talked in detail about the diamagnetic anisotropy because of sigma, pi and conjugate systems, and then we moved on to hydrogen bonding as a factor which affects the chemical shift positions. Now, in the next session we will take up yet another characteristic of NMR spectrum, and that is spin-spin coupling. That is basically how do two different protons in the neighborhood interact with each other or influence each other's chemical shift positions. Thank you.